Hey everyone, this is Mary Beth McAndrews from Dread Central, and I'm here today with director of Terrifier 2, Damien Leone. Hello.
Hello back. How are you?
I'm great. So, how are you feeling about Terrifier 2 is making its way into the world?
It's exciting. I'm very anxious though because it's about to premiere. I'm about to see it with an audience for the first time at Fantastic Fest, so I'm a little nervous, not gonna lie.
So, did you always want to make a sequel to Terrifier? I know Art the Clown has had quite a life outside of Terrifier, but did you always kind of expect to write a sequel for the first film?
I did actually
Oh,
because
cool.
yeah, even in originally at the end of Terrifier, you do not see Art the Clown rise up in the morgue. But I knew when I wrote it, I was gonna bring him back, but I didn't want the audience just waiting and thinking like, is he? Is he? Like I wanted them to know that there is going to be a sequel and he is going to come back. So I did know for a while, and there's just so many wonderful scenarios and situations that I have in my head that I still want to put him in. So there's definitely a little more to explore for me personally with that character.
Cool. And so this is a long movie. And so which is incredible to see an Art the Clown almost 2.5 hour film. And so what kind of in approaching the film and making it that long, were you ever worried that people might be kind of thrown off by that kind of long runtime?
Yeah, I didn't expect it to be that long. I didn't think of a runtime in mind when I was writing the script. So I just
Yeah.
wrote out organically the story that I wanted to tell. And we just jumped in and started shooting it. And then it wasn't really until I got into the editing room that I realized the length. And and I said, wow, that's pretty unprecedented for this type of movie. I don't know how they're going to respond to that. But I was really trying to cut things. And there were scenes that I cut and didn't even edit them because I knew it wasn't driving the narrative in any way. So there were multiple scenes that we shot, wasted hours of our lives shooting,
Yeah.
but it doesn't matter. You have to just tell the best story. But again, it's not like, to me anyway, I don't think this movie is just filled with a movie filled with pointless filler.
Yeah.
Like every scene is pretty much driving the story forward. You're learning something new about a character. The stakes are being raised, and then so I was very conscious of that, writing it and editing it. So I don't know. We also live in a time where it's still different for movies. Movies don't quite get a pass, especially slashers. But we live in a time where people just blow through shows and binge an 8 episode show, an 8 hour show, or 13 episodes in one sitting, pretty much. So
Yeah.
it's I think they can handle 2 hours and 18 minutes.
I think so. It's pretty nonstop too. There's a lot, just a little bit of gore.
A little bit,
Just a little
yeah,
bit.
a little bit of action, a little bit of gore.
A little bit of action, a little bit of gore. And so, speaking of gore, not to spoil anything, but can you maybe talk about one of your favorite scenes in the movie, or a scene that you're really proud that you could pull off? Because there's quite a few scenes in this film I feel like that could take that title.
Yeah, oh, thank you. Yeah, there are a few. There's one in particular I've said, not getting too spoilery, but because everybody at this point is expecting or hoping for us to top the hacksaw scene, because that's become the sort of
Yeah.
glorious scene from part one. And our fans are definitely gore hounds, so they're expecting some more of that, I would assume. So I wanted to tackle a scene that would hopefully rival the hacksaw scene at least. And all I can say about it is there was a picture of one of Jack the Ripper's victims that I saw in a book about Jack the Ripper. And it was really, really horrifying and disturbing. And it was the aftermath of this corpse like splayed out on a bed. And it was so horribly mutilated that you really couldn't even tell it was a human being anymore. It was just really, really disgusting. And I said, well, that's a good way to end this person's life, and let's sort of reverse engineer that photo and see how did art bring that person to that state. So those are the kind of things you have to think about when you're writing for Art the Clown. Yeah, yeah. So
Oh, that's horrifying in a cool way. That I know. I'm pretty sure I know what you're talking about, and that makes a lot of sense about that
there
inspiration.
you go. Yeah, yeah.
But that actually leads me to my next question: is like, do you ever? I'm curious because of like the hacksaw scene and like the reputation that Terrifier has. Is it ever kind of like nervous and making sure you like get top the gore, or at least bring that kind of action? Or I mean, you can do it really well, but is there ever any kind of like nerves about bringing that for this kind of movie?
There are, I've said this before, there's lines that I personally feel maybe you can go too far. Even still, I know Terrifier goes really far, and there's a lot of people that will probably already find it very off-putting. But when I'm designing a scene like that, it could, for me, it could actually be like 10 times worse. And I say, we could take it here, but I know that's too much and we have to stop here. Because I do also want it to be, I want it to be more extreme than your typical Hollywood R-rated movie, but I don't want it to be so extreme where it's not accessible and it becomes a very niche movie, because I feel like Art the Clown is an accessible villain. Like, a lot of people love him because he's charismatic and he has fun doing what he's doing, and they genuinely have fun with that character, even though he's sadistic. So I think that would be a detriment to make it so extreme where people can't enjoy that character. And also, it's so sort of like fantasy heavy, fantasy laden, where I think you can get away with a little bit more of that extreme gore, because it's not like you're watching Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer where you leave and you're like, oh my God, I could bump into this guy.
I have to take a shower.
Yeah, listen, I love Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer.
Oh yeah.
But that's a movie you kind of leave feeling really, bleak and really down the world, where I didn't want that to be the case with Terrifier. I wanted you to walk out and be like, well, that was, it was horrifying and disturbing, but it was also clearly fantastic, and we were having fun with this fictional killer clown. So yeah.
Hell yeah. And so you talked a little bit, you talked like Jack the Ripper for that one scene, but I'm always so curious, like, how do you come up with these ideas for creative kills? Like how do you kind of come around to these incredible moments and scenes?
It's weird. The inspiration can come from anywhere. The hacksaw scene, at the time I said, look, where's this low budget movie? We have really nothing really pushing us. So what could we do? What could we put in this movie that's going to make someone watch this as opposed to a big Hollywood horror blockbuster? And I said, well, I know the special effects are my wheelhouse. Let's show a kill scene that's really insane and it's not something you typically see in your average movie. So I was investigating medieval torture methods, and I came across this method of sawing people in half with a giant saw. It's a little different than it is in Terrifier, but it's a giant saw with a guy at each end, sawing people in half.
I've seen that before.
Yeah, you've seen the image. Yeah, there's sketches of it and whatnot. But again, I saw that and I said, that is absolutely terrifying, the worst way imaginable to go. I said, I've never seen that in a movie. And I've seen a lot of slasher movies. So let's try and pull that off. And maybe that'll stand out. So that's it. It could be anything. But there's also, I like doing kills that you've seen a bunch of times, traditional slasher trope kills and classic things with just a knife or something like that. But instead of your typical knife goes up, comes down, kills the person, scene over, I'll have Art just stab the person 50 times and stab them in the face and do little unique things, like have the knife get stuck in the person's cheek, or it's like harder to get at. Just like those little details, little moments where it just makes it feel fresh and new and maybe even a little more realistic. And he's relentless, so the scenes go on and on and on.
So you've talked about how much you love slasher. So what is some of your, I want to say favorite, but I know how hard it is to pick a favorite, but what are some of the slashers that have been the most influential, you think, for you?
Yeah, I had the usual suspects, but growing up as a kid, Jason was my favorite slasher. But
cool.
Yeah, but my favorite slasher films out of all those franchises are the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Halloween. So those are as films, as a filmmaker, those are my two favorites that I appreciate the most. I watch those the most. And you could see that those are kind of, them married together kind of makes Terrifier. Right? So you have the grit of Texas Chainsaw and just, I'm not saying I could capture the atmosphere of John Carpenter, but clearly there is so much blatant homage to Halloween. It's ridiculous. I mean, I'm obsessed with those filmmakers and those movies. So I would say that, but all of them. I love Freddy. I absolutely love Nightmare on Elm Street. 1 and 3 are my favorites in that franchise. And I took a lot of, right? And I took a lot of, not that you can necessarily see it, but there was a lot of inspiration from part 3 in Terrifier 2 with my sort of fantasy tone. It's way more fantastic than Terrifier 1. And there's a lot of interesting sequences in the movie that you wouldn't imagine if you just watched Terrifier 1.
That makes a lot of sense now that I think about that. I didn't even think like, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And I also am curious, what is a movie that terrified you as a child? Like, were you a horror fan? Have you always been a horror fan, like since you were young?
Always. My mother named me after The Omen, and I knew about it since I was.
No way! Oh wow, what a daunting namesake.
Yeah. She literally would go into a video store and ask the clerk if she could see the box or whatever, because you're talking 1983, and to see if she could see exactly how Damien was spelled in the movie, because it had to be spelled. Some people spell it with an A or an O, and it had to be with an E. She was just obsessed with the name. So I knew my namesake since since I could perceive reality. So I'm 2 years old.
I'm assuming your mom was a huge horror fan too.
Huge horror fan, like she would let me watch all these movies at a very young age. And ironically, she can't really handle them anymore. I actually showed her a rough cut of Terrifier 2. I filmed her watching it. She didn't know I was filming her watching it, and she was yelling at me through the whole movie, saying, "What is wrong with you? What are you like? No one's gonna watch this. Nobody's gonna watch this." And I'm like, I'm doing this to make you proud. I'm like, you named me after The Omen.
You did this, Mom. Like, what did you expect?
I lost her at some point, but I will say though, the movies that really creeped me out, because there were slashers that did not scare me at all, like Jason and them. I knew they were just monsters. And I looked at them as these fictional monsters that like the way other kids would look at Batman or Superman. They were just like comic book characters to me. But a movie like The Exorcist really scared me as a kid. That sent chills down.
Did you grow up Catholic?
I did.
Yes, me too. I feel like it even has even more layers for Catholic.
Exactly.
No matter what, if you grew up Catholic, that movie will strikes the fear of God quite literally into your heart.
Yep. 100%. So that one, you felt like that was more than a movie. There was something going on there. You felt like the horror could come into your house or something. And and the other one, Zombies. Actually, Zombies is my favorite subgenre of horror. And
cool.
Yeah, love them. I love the George Romero trilogy, the original trilogy. So yeah, I'd say the original Dawn of the Dead creeped me out a lot. Because there's just something about seeing when it's the whole world being overrun, and there's just impending doom that you cannot escape no matter where you turn, and it's your friends and your loved ones, and it could be you. That was always creepy to me. There was something about the way Dawn of the Dead looks. It looks so gritty and real that was a big inspiration. That's one of my favorite movies ever.
Hell yeah. And then my final question is, can we expect more from Art the Clown? Can you tell us?
Well, I think once you see Terrifier 2, you'll see that we're world building at this point, and there's going to be even more questions after you see. We've answered some things, but there's even more questions when you leave, and there's definitely a lot more to do and explore with that character. So I safely say there will be at least one more Terrifier. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, Damien, thank you so much for chatting with me today about Terrifier, and best of luck at the screening at Fantastic Fest.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you so much. That was fun.